It's time now for me to share some of the specific components of CMST ampersand 220 as I teach it. That's the two-year college public speaking course here in Washington State as I teach it at Clover Park Technical College. Before I go through the individual speech activities that make up the course, I want to give a little bit of background and some caveats that have to do with what I'm going to be presenting. The background has to do primarily with materials on Angel, which is the learning management system used by our college at this time. And the caveats have to do with the broader question of what kind of class is this with the kinds of students that I see here at Clover Park versus the students that you may encounter at your institutions. So let me talk about the materials in Angel. First of all, I should let you know that the actual teaching and learning materials that I've put together for the course are primarily arrayed under the Lessons tab in Angel. So when students and when you go to look for what's going to happen in the class, you'll find those things in folders in the Lessons tab. Second, I'd like you to know that in each of the folders for the speech activities, I by and large provide several things. I try to give a rationale for the materials that are in the folder that have to do with the speech activity. I try to explain how the speech activities will take place and what the implications are for students, as well as the expectations for students and also for instructors. And finally, I provide samples of written and recorded materials where I have them. So in the case of speech outlines, I provide sample outlines. And in the case of all the speech activities, I have sample YouTube videos, either of myself or of many, many students, or both. In other words, there should be no reason for anyone to go into any of these folders and come out saying, I don't know what's going on here. Even if they don't understand all of the underpinnings of the activities, they can certainly tell what the activities look like and feel like and how they read. Now, something else I should tell you about the materials in Angel has to do with the syllabus and the schedule that I provide there. You'll see from the syllabus that there are no written tests, no quizzes, or no final examination. Instead, the emphasis with respect to speech activities is on 7 speeches that the students give. Now, I'd like to explain the speeches individually, and we'll do so shortly, but I'd like you to know first that in addition to the 7 speeches, which compose 60% of all the points that a student can earn, there are also ungraded speeches and critiques of past speeches and live community speeches that the students attend. So the 7 speeches are all going to be recorded. It's important for the students to know that up front. I would say that the speeches are probably the hardest part of the syllabus for students to gain all their points in, for reasons that I will explain later. Whereas doing the ungraded speeches is simply a matter of showing up and doing one's best, and also experimenting perhaps in ways that are not likely to be as easy and risk-free in a graded speech. And finally, the third major component of the syllabus activities is the portfolio, the public speaking portfolio that students produce. Now, again, to give you some idea of the balance of these 3 components, I would say that the speeches, especially the graded speeches, are the hardest part of the syllabus for students to complete well. Then the ungraded speeches and the critiques are very easy because all they have to do is follow directions, listen, read, reflect, and answer some questions. Now, this really is not too much of a challenge for most students if they're reliable and don't procrastinate too much. Whereas the public speaking portfolio can be either easy or hard depending upon how students behave toward it. if they behave reasonably and get started on it early in the quarter, then, or the semester, then it's not going to be that difficult, especially if they keep up along the way as the term unfolds. However, if they don't do this, it can be a lot harder and a lot more challenging. So that at the end of the quarter, there are invariably some students who are up until the wee hours of the morning working on their portfolios. Anyway, to break this down again, the 3 graded speeches are each worth up to 100 points out of the 500 points. The ungraded speeches plus the critique are worth 100 points together. Also, if they don't do one of the ungraded speeches and make up for it, or if they don't do all 6 of the critiques, they don't get any of those 100 points. So it's either all or none for those 100 points. And the portfolio is graded in a way that I will explain later on when I speak specifically about the portfolio. So that's some background. Now some caveats about the course in general and what you'll see in Angel in specific. The first thing I should say, if you have not already figured this out from what I've said, is that I regard this class as I teach it to be a skills course much more than a knowledge course. With 7 speeches in only 12 weeks, it's very clear, especially in large classes, which we have at our college with 25 to 30 students, that there isn't a lot of time, even if I wanted to provide it, to share background information about rhetoric and logic and the history of public speaking, and even about cultural factors dealing with public speaking or international and multicultural elements of the subject. So instead, what takes place in the course as I teach it is that primarily with introduction and debriefing for all of the speeches, and with some overview at the start of the course to explain what's going on, the vast majority of the time of the course is spent with the students actually speaking. This reflects my philosophy as I've stated it to you before, but if you're looking for a lot of scholarly material and background information about the theory of communication and the theory of public oral communication, this course will not include that very much. I'm sure I know it's out there and I've read much of it myself, but given the parameters of the students with whom I deal, I'm simply not providing a great deal of that in this course. Second of all, I teach this class face-to-face here at Clover Park Technical College. I have done this for 8 years now. I have taught public speaking online in the past, but under the circumstances here, given the materials that I have and the goals that I have, I really feel it's most appropriate and most beneficial for the students to have me teach this class face-to-face. However, that doesn't mean that it can't be taught in a hybrid format or even totally online. I believe part of the strengths of the Open Course Library project is that everything in it should be usable by you instructors and other institutions, either face-to-face or online in any kind of combination. So take what you see here and use it either online or in a hybrid format or face-to-face. I believe it is amenable to all of those modalities. Third, nobody needs to do all of the things that I have included in the materials on Angel in any given school term. I don't even do all of the things every school term. The Open Course Library is meant to be open. It's meant to be grand and capacious. So when you see something here that you think is wonderful, then please go ahead and try to do it. But don't assume that I consider it possible to do everything that is there. I'm trying to gather a huge amount of material, again, that I may not use all of in any given term, in such a way that you can pick and choose from what you see and combine it into a package that will be good for your students at a particular time. By the same token, the sequence in which you teach the various speech activities is up to you. The second speech that I have the students do is a so-called demonstration instruction speech. It's informative, obviously, but many of you may feel that it might be better to have a demonstration instruction speech later on in the course, or perhaps not at all. the order in which you do these things will depend on your own philosophy and upon the needs of your students. Also, I think it's important to say that the way in which you weight the activities with respect to the assessment and the points that you attach to the various activities is, again, up to you. My experience here at Clover Park has been that due to the breadth and number of activities that I expect students to do, the attrition rate in the course is probably somewhat higher than it might be in a lot of other general education classes. Part of this also is because students don't know what to expect and think many times that they're avoiding a writing class and getting an easy speaking class when they come to CMST ampersand 220, whereas, as we all know, that's not necessarily the case at all. There's plenty of writing to do in a public speaking class if students are to succeed in it. Anyway, if you want to tinker with the requirements of the course, it's very possible that you could have a higher or lower attrition rate among your students. What I have thought in the past with respect to the course is that it resembles a graduate class. By that I mean that the students who complete the course are apt to do very well. The letter grades that students get tend to be mostly A's, A minuses, and B pluses with a smattering of B's. If I were a graduate student, of course, I would not want to make a B. I would want to have at least an A minus and preferably an A in everything that I take. In undergraduate school, that's not necessarily the case, and you may see this as in an entirely different light than I do. So again, you may want to change the weight and the nature of the requirements of the course depending upon what you think will be best for your students. Finally, I would like to mention that if you have other samples, either of the kinds of things that you see in this Angel course or outside of those things, if you have samples of other activities, other materials, other assessment instruments, and so forth, I really hope you will share them. I'm not sure at this point what the mechanism will be for doing that in CMST ampersand 220 on Angel through the Open Course Library and through connections at Rice University, but I hope that you will do your best to think of things that can augment the materials you see in the course as it now exists so that it can be better for you as an instructor and better for your students and for other students around the world. These have been some background information points and some caveats before I go into the specific speech activities and supplemental activities for the course.